You're on with Lauren Zayu for Unbossed, Unbothered, and Unfiltered, a show about what you say, how you say it, and what to do after it's said. We'll talk about communications and messaging blunders, successes, distractions, and what all of it means for you. Join me for a crash course in what you need to know in politics and issues driving the 2020 elections. Hello and welcome to Unbossed, Unbothered, and Unfiltered. I'm your host, Lauren Zayu, and this is our season finale. I'm really excited to be here for the past 13 episodes. We've talked to real people about the work they were doing on the election and about the messages that we felt we were being sent as Black people. I want to thank each and every one of you for your thoughts and time and energy to be on this journey with me. It's been a ride, and I'm so grateful that you were willing to lend me your ear this season. Since it is the finale, I decided to do something a little different. So I hope you don't mind, but this episode is just me. And in an effort to be hopeful or optimistic about the incoming administration, I want to offer my final thoughts on different topics that I believe should be of top priority to the Biden administration. I want to name that while these topics are numbered, they are not ranked. So I don't believe in ranking things that are all of very high importance. More than that, I don't believe that trauma can be ranked. And so much of what we're about to delve into are topics and experiences that impact people's daily lives. So while you may hear me number them, know that I believe they are all of top priority for the administration as far as things that need to be responded to and addressed directly. With all of that on the table, let's go ahead and get started. I want to start first with immigration, mainly because of the connection that it has to the now previous administration. President Donald Trump launched his candidacy in June 2015 by calling all Mexicans rapists and criminals. He had hundreds of thousands of people chanting "Build that wall" in reference to Mexico. One of the first things he did his first month in office was attempting a Muslim ban from various regions of the world. This administration was the first time we saw images of children in cages at the border, forced separation of families, and children being lost by government officials. His rhetoric led directly to one of the largest shooting casualties in history with the shooting in El Paso, where the shooter cited Donald Trump in his reasoning for doing it. He tried to overturn DACA every chance he got. Women were forced into hysterectomies, and who knows what didn't actually make the news. To put it lightly, for the last 5 years, immigrants and those of us who love and care for them have been in the direct line of fire with this president. And if I'm honest, the response from the left was inadequate. It hasn't been anywhere close to what it should be. And as an ally, I apologize. Responding to this Trump administration has felt like trying to drink from a fire hydrant. There was just so much to do and so little time to do it. And to call it overwhelming would be an understatement. But none of that negates the real hurt and real trauma that so many people felt under this administration. And it needs to be a top priority of the Biden-Harris administration to deal with that. Let me make it as clear as possible. There needs to be a quick, cost-effective path to citizenship for all people who desire it in this country. All. I don't care how you got here, and I don't care if our exceptionally racist and arbitrary laws deem it legal. Everyone deserves to live life in the open, and forcing people to live in the shadows is inhumane and unjust. It's also worth noting that not every immigrant in America wants to be an American citizen. And so to use American citizenship as this bar for whether or not like people are treated with basic human decency is ridiculous. Like if you don't want to be an American citizen when you come here, that's fine. You should be able to live and work and take care of yourself and your family without citizenship being a prerequisite for that, especially when we know that this is really something that only is, is hyper targeted to Black and brown immigrants. No one questions the rights and desires of white immigrants in the same way. And so if they don't want to be an American citizen, that's fine. But also noting that like there should be a process if they do want to be an American citizen. Number 2, student loan debt. I see a lot of back and forth about the how and when and why to cancel student loan debt, arguments about who it really helps and whether it's privilege, either way. I want to clarify a few things before I issue my perspective on this, which I'm sure many of you already know. One, as I've mentioned before, student loan debt is not just an issue for young people. Our parents and grandparents took on a good share of this debt as well. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley noted recently that currently 3 million senior citizens are having their Social Security checks garnished to pay their student loans. I'm going to say that again. Currently, 3 million senior citizens in America are having their Social Security checks garnished to pay their student loans. The only word I can think of to describe that is abhorrent. Literally the only word. People on a fixed income still paying on degrees that outlasted the actual career is unacceptable. It's also worth noting that student loan debt is not just for college graduates, i.e. professionals. There are people who start degrees or trade school and don't finish for many reasons, most often financial. So the idea that you were not able to complete a program because you couldn't afford it, and then we won't forgive your student loans because the assumption is that you went on to get the well-paying job that the program was supposed to offer you is ludicrous. Leaning into that is the idea that we shouldn't pay for rich kids to have their loans forgiven. While I don't necessarily want to do that, I think that's a much smaller portion of the population than is being projected. If 2% of a student loan forgiveness is rich kids, but it helps the bulk of the population to be able to buy a home, start a business, or even go on vacation, I'm open to that. If the rich are already doing better than us, why keep the rest of us in debt to spite them? And another point you hear often that I really want to address is the idea that it's disrespectful to people who were able to pay their loans off to forgive the loans of others now. And I mean this in all sincerity. I do not know how a conversation about student loan forgiveness ends up centering people who are not paying on student loans right now. Like we are actively not talking to you. The same logic says that when we find cures for diseases, it's disrespectful to the people who have already passed away from it. Like, why maintain a terribly toxic system just because certain people were able to succeed in it? Like, I cannot compute why that matters so much to people. And in case it needs to be said, no, it's not disrespectful to people who've already paid their loans, even though this isn't a conversation that's about you. And it's not disrespectful literally because you already paid them. So whether or not mine are forgiven has nothing to do with whether or not you continue to pay yours, because you're not continuing to pay yours. Like, I make it make sense. I don't know. Which brings me to my perspective. A student loan should be forgiven because they're predatory. The government offered loans with high interest rates to its own citizens with the intention of doing substantially well on the other side of them. People should not have to be tens of thousands of dollars in debt to get an education. They shouldn't have to live in poverty at government and nonprofit jobs for a decade after they graduate to be forgiven. If education is going to be worth its salt, you need to be able to break even at some point, and the current system right now isn't set up for you to do that. Which brings me to my next point of high priority for this administration, the COVID-19 global pandemic. Let's take a moment for the absolute, complete, and utter travesty this year has been. In less than a year, we've lost more than 250,000 people to this deadly virus. In addition to life, we're grieving graduations, baby showers, weddings, religious gatherings, and so much more. And in a year of so much grief, we were even robbed of our ability to safely gather and console one another. Since March, we've done work, school, and life from our homes with absolutely no reprieve from the government. At the end of March, the Trump administration sent some households $1,200 for each adult and $500 for each child in March. For clarification, it's November, and nowhere in America is that enough to survive on. Nowhere. People are out of work. The holidays are coming, and COVID-19 numbers are on the rise. Companies are clamoring to have a vaccine ready by the end of the year, but even if that is possible, dissemination of said vaccine will take well into 2021. People need relief now, and it needs to be substantial, comprehensive, and ongoing. No other nation in the world has fallen to COVID-19 the way that America has. No other nation has hundreds of thousands of bodies on their hands and has cases that are rising by the thousands every day. The handling of this virus is a permanent stain on the fabric of American history. Because so much has happened, we haven't had the time to grieve and to take a step back and even check in as a country. If nothing else, I hope this administration allows us the chance to take a deep breath. We haven't been able to do that in a very long time. And finally, this administration needs to establish sovereignty against the ever-growing, very present threat, danger of white supremacy. I hope it's addressed directly at some point, but whether the incoming administration admits to it or not, we're actively in the middle of a coup. A faction of American citizens are attempting to overthrow a rightful election because they don't like who won. And I know this appears to be a fringe activity, a flurry of failed lawsuits, maybe like the pining hopes and dreams of a failed electorate. But let's look a little closer. The Trump administration, despite record low approval ratings, a global pandemic, a summer of protest and unrest only rivaled by 1968, and an economy in shambles, received more votes than President Trump received in 2016. He increased in every single demographic. 71 million people thought his vision of America was what we needed to move forward. 71 million people felt that white supremacy and authoritarian leadership were how they wanted our country to spend the next 4 years. Following the defeat, they managed to organize thousands of people to rally in Washington, D.C., which turned violent and led to the arrest of 20 people. They also had a similar rally in Atlanta, and we're still roughly 2 months out from Inauguration Day. Do these people sound reasonable? Do they sound like someone who will be willing to unite across party lines for the betterment of our country? Do they sound like people ready to chalk it up and go home? The first priority of the incoming Biden-Harris administration needs to be ensuring the safety of Black and brown people across the country from the roving militias that have formed. It needs to be ensuring that we have more to rely on than calling the police, who more often than not are on the side of the militias. It needs to show that while, of course, President Biden will be a president for all Americans, that some of us are in more danger than others. It needs to show that while, of course, President Biden will be a president for all Americans, that some of us are in more danger than others. And that having the Black communities back is more than just rhetoric. There is a real and present danger in our communities, and it's up to them to stop it. Notice I said them, not us. Why is it their responsibility? Because these no mask wearing, no hand washing, demanding we reopen, white supremacist voting, 2016 living absolute clowns have made clear that they do not value our lives. The Trump administration has empowered white supremacists from the White House, and the next person to sit in that seat has to be the one to stop it. Black voters gave Joe Biden the White House to do just that. You just finished this season's Unbossed, Unbothered, and Unfiltered. So many of you have reached out over these past few weeks to tell me how much you're enjoying the podcast, whether you listen on Spotify or Apple, or you watch us on YouTube. And thank you so much for that support. And something that would be really helpful, actually, is if you told Apple, Spotify, or YouTube that. So no matter where you watch it, if you could give me a 5-star rating and comment how much you're enjoying the podcast, I would really appreciate it. Last thing before I go, I said season finale, not series finale. I'm going to take some time for the holidays and to renew, and I hope to join you all in 2021 as we take the journey of the first 100 days of the Biden administration together. As always, if you're looking for me between now and then, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lauren Zayu. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I hope we'll be together soon. Oops, and one more thing. In the event that we want any shot at undoing so much of what Trump has done and moving forward with a progressive agenda, we must elect John Ossoff and Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock down in Georgia in the Senate. So please, if you can send, if you're in Georgia, send your actual ballot and your manpower to volunteer. In the event that you're outside of Georgia, connect to local organizations on the ground like Fair Fight, like Black Voters Matter, that are down there registering, and let's really pull this off, because in the event that Mitch McConnell and Republicans still take the Senate, we have an even larger uphill battle to contend with. Thank you for tuning in to Unbossed, Unbothered, and Unfiltered with host Lauren Zayu and music by Lighthouse Productions. For more information on Unbossed, Unbothered, and Unfiltered, or to review today's episode, please follow at Lauren Zayu on Twitter and Instagram, or subscribe to the Lauren Zayu YouTube channel.